fair to say that 2022 has been an interesting year, particularly for those involved in the property sector. And some of those changes are going to roll on into 2023 that continue to impact the market, particularly the rise of interest rates and the cost of living crisis. And we've got material prices that continue to rise as well as changes in regulation and tax as well. The chatter and conversation around a market crash has seemed to have dissipated now, and more of it shifted towards a price drop and maybe even a price correction. However, one thing for sure is in 2023 we'll be entering a recessionary period. Hey, if you're watching my videos for the first time, my name is Saj Hussain, and on this channel I share with you my 15 plus years of property investing experience to ultimately help you get further faster in your own property investing business. When we talk about the housing market, it seems to be this huge thing that applies to the whole country. The reality is, when you talk about housing and the housing market, there are lots of micro markets throughout the country. And when we look at various reports on what's happening in the market, they tend to vary sometimes from area and sometimes depending on which is the organization that's doing the research. So some people have been talking about, hey, the market's going to crash. We're going to see a 20-25% drop in house prices. And others are talking about maybe not even reaching double digits in terms of a fall in house prices. Now, personally speaking, I think we're probably going to be maybe 10 or 15%, but this is really more of a gut feeling rather than relying on any kind of heavy data, particularly because the data that we look at, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, they tend to approach it with different agendas. So when I look back at the market when I first started in property, and I look at the early days of 2007, 2008, when the market first started to crash, and when we talk about the price drops in Birmingham where we're based, we saw house drops of probably price drops of in the region of maybe 25%. So it's very easy for us to find houses that were previously listed, for example, let's say £100,000 that you could pick up for £75,000. That became the norm. But also if we look a little bit further afield, say for example in Dudley or maybe even in Stoke-on-Trent, we started seeing in some places where it was possible to get 40 and even 50% below what would have been perceived as market value at that time. Now, this isn't really representative of the whole country because there might have been other parts, for example, parts of London, where house prices maybe didn't even fall into double digits when you talk about a house price drop. So this is just an example. When we talk about house prices falling, it's not really the same across the country. It depends on the pockets and the locations in terms of what's happening. And of course, when we're looking at the data, looking at the agenda behind the organizations putting together that information for us. For instance, right now, Rightmove are predicting that the house price will fall by about 3% in 2023. However, Nationwide Building Society, in their research, they're talking about house prices more likely to fall by about 5% and possibly even further if there's an increase in unemployment, because that's what they're really basing the numbers on, that if unemployment continues to rise, then house prices will fall in a much more severe way. All this talk of the market crashing does actually present some massive opportunities. Make sure you watch all the way to the end of the video where I talk about what some of those opportunities are. If you do however want to meet up with me and have a chat and talk about property, then make sure you book yourself onto the property meet, which is on the third Tuesday of every month. All you need to do is go to the link sajhussain.com/networking, book yourself on, and look forward to seeing you there. Zoopla and Halifax also believe it's going to be about 5% in terms of the drop. However, Lloyds Bank think it's going to be more. It's going to be around 8% in terms of house price falls. And they've also put aside about £668 million to cover bad debts in terms of people struggling to be able to pay their mortgages. The Office of Budget Responsibility go even further, and they believe prices will fall by 9% during 2023 and 2024 before they start to recover in 2025. There's other organisations that are going further still, such as Savills predicting a 10% drop in house prices, and Finance talking about the market dropping by 10.98% and a whopping 15.4% in London. Very few are predicting anything more than about 15%. However, these still are some of the sharpest drops since the 2008 crash that we had at that time. However, it's also important to factor in that since the pandemic in 2020, we've seen house prices rise by about 20% across the country. So if prices fall by 15%, is that a crash or is it merely a correction because prices have already risen by 20% in the last couple of years? Zoopla have also stated that there'll be a north-south divide when it comes to house price falls, with the south suffering much further than they will in the north. So i.e. those higher value properties will be the ones that will fall significantly more than the lower priced areas. Savills have also stated that they think there'll be two types of buyers in 2023. those that needs must, i.e. that they need to move, for example, relocation of a job, and then those that are downsizing and maybe moving to smaller properties and putting some money in the bank. They believe they're going to be the two core buyers in 2023. Savills believe the rest of the market is really going to be biding their time, and what they'll be doing is waiting for the right house to come along at the right price before they make the decision to move. The property market is primarily driven by the entry-level properties, i.e. those for first-time buyers, and many buy-to-let investors as well. So when it comes to a change in the markets, for example, house prices fall, how does that affect first-time investors or first-time home buyers particularly? Well, in fact, there'll be an advantage right now because the mortgage guarantee scheme still exists. That means they can get a 95% mortgage to purchase their home, and they're only paying a 5% deposit, and it's guaranteed by the government. There's also no stamp duty up to $425,000. This means first-time buyers can really benefit from the climate that's probably going to appear over the next 24 months or so. The other core thing that drives the market is the ability to be able to tap into finance to be able to buy property. So when the market crashed in 2007 and 2008, what we found at that time, there was a lack of liquidity in the marketplace, i.e. there's very little cash available to borrow to be able to purchase property. So prices were really low because there's very little cash around. So although people had an appetite, they wanted to buy cheap property, the ability to tap into the funding wasn't really there. And that's what caused house prices to fall so significantly. However, this time round, the market's a little bit different. There's a lot of cash still around. There's really a lack of confidence at the moment. However, a key driver for house prices falling is high interest rates. So currently we've got interest rates at 3.5%, and it's likely that the Bank of England will continue to increase those in 2023. And this is really for them to be able to get inflation under control, which is now over 11%. And Rishi Sunak has already announced that he wants to try and get that to half of what it currently is before the end of the year. So they're going to have to do a lot of work to make that happen. 5-year mortgage products are currently priced about 5.5%. So we've got base rate about 3.5%. There's a 2% gap there, which is essentially the profit that the banks are making. So if interest rates continue to rise, they can probably absorb some of that. So what that essentially means is that the rates are probably not going to rise, the borrowing rates, significantly more than they currently are, even if the Bank of England rate rises in 2023 as is expected. So what about landlords and tenants? Well, landlords have really been struggling recently with the changes to taxation such as Section 24, but other changes are happening as well, such as capital gains tax allowances, which will get reduced in April 23. So that means that they'll end up paying more tax when they're selling property as well. There's also local licensing schemes that have been introduced, and council tax that's increasing as well, for example, where properties are being taxed by the room rather than the whole property in its entirety. All of these things are leading to more and more costs for landlords, and some landlords selling up and wanting to get out of the market. In fact, Hampton's estate agency have said last year 1 in 6 homes that came to the market were actually landlords that are selling up to be able to get out of being a landlord. This in turn is putting pressure on the rental market, where there's fewer and fewer stock available, and also pushing up rents, where there's been a 19% increase in rents last year, and it looks like that rents are going to continue to rise. And there's been many reasons for this. For example, increase in interest rates, you've got Section 24 taxation that's had an impact on landlords. Ultimately, being a landlord is a business, and it has to make financial sense for people who want to continue to buy property, to rent property out. If they're losing money by purchasing property, if they're being taxed so heavily, if they're being regulated so much that it doesn't make sense anymore, of course, as with any business, it gets to a point where if it doesn't make sense, you'll leave, you'll exit that business, and that's what's starting to happen. Most of the people that watch these videos are property investors. So does that mean it's doom and gloom for property investors? Well, absolutely not. Because right now there's a massive opportunity that's going to exist for maybe 24 months at the very most. It may even be as little as 6 months, where there'll be an opportunity to buy property at very good prices that you may not be able to do again for a very long time. If you could roll the clock back, say 10, 15, or even 20 years, would you have purchased property then? If you knew then what you know now, absolutely, it's very likely that you'll have purchased property then. And this is now your second chance. This is an opportunity to be able to purchase property where there'll be way fewer people looking to buy property. It means that actually there's a lot less competition, prices are lower, and there'll be some huge opportunities to be able to benefit. It could be traditional ways where you're purchasing as buy to let. It could be that you're flipping property. Yes, you can still make money from flipping property even in a downward or a flat market. Or it may even be some of the other more creative strategies, such as controlling property and benefiting from property without even owning it. Here's the thing, you've probably heard the term that there's more millionaires made during a recession than at any other time. And this is absolutely true. But now is the time to action that, rather than sitting back and regret in a few years' time, looking back and say, hey, I could have, I should have, maybe if I'd only done this. Rather than live in regret, what you want to do is benefit from taking action now and benefiting from the opportunities that are going to exist. When I first got involved in property investing, what I started doing was sourcing property deals for other people. The market was very slow at the time. It was when it was the height of a market crash. There were a lot of good opportunities around. People were fearful for buying. They weren't actually buying property. And I did very well at that time to be able to get my foot on the ladder and really get more involved in property and property investing. But by about 2012, the market started to change. It was starting to pick up. Prices were rising much more quickly, and there were fewer really good deals around. But that didn't mean there were no deals around. Just the strategies we were using started to change and started to evolve. So one of the things I stopped doing at that time was sourcing property for other people. We just focused on continuing to source, but only really for ourselves, and cherry pick really good deals that we wanted to do. And now, for the first time since 2012, we're going to open the doors, be able to source property for other people and other investors. And that's only because I believe there's going to be lots of really good opportunities around, and we're not going to be able to capitalize on all of those ourselves. We're not going to be able to acquire all of those. So we'll find really good deals and also offer those to other people as well. And if you want to know more about that, just make sure you ping us a message on social media and we'll reach out to you and can have a conversation around that. If you've enjoyed this video, then I'd like to ask you a favor. YouTube and the YouTube stats tell me that most of the people that watch my videos are not actually subscribed to the channel, although they come back and watch the videos. It really helped me if you are a subscriber by clicking that subscribe button, or click on my face over here to subscribe to the channel. And then once you've done that, then you can click on this video over here, where you can learn more about what sourcing is and how it works, and reasons really why we're going to relaunch that business in 2023, because we believe there'll be more opportunity to make money the next couple of years than there probably was over the last 10 years.